Dominic Ashford had made men twice his size tremble with a single glance. He had built an empire from nothing, commanded loyalty that others could only dream of, and never not once in his 36 years had he felt nervous. Until now, he sat alone at the corner table of the Ivory Cup, Boston's most elegant cafe tucked away in Back Bay, where the chandeliers cast soft golden light and the air smelled of fresh espresso and old money. His Patek Philippe showed 6:47 p.m., 17 minutes late. Dominic's finger tapped against the white marble tabletop, a rhythm so subtle that only someone who knew him well would recognize it as the only crack in his carefully constructed composure. Everything else about him was flawless. The black Armani vest that fit like it was sewn onto his body, the crisp white shirt beneath, the way his dark hair was swept back with precision. He looked exactly like what his public persona suggested: a successful restaurateur, a businessman, a man of refined taste. No one in this cafe knew that beneath that polished exterior lived a man who controlled half of South Boston's underground. No one knew that the quiet gentleman sipping Earl Grey had ordered things that would haunt ordinary people's nightmares. And no one knew that right now, that same man was fighting the urge to check his phone for the 12th time. "She's different, Dominic." Maria Santos's voice echoed in his mind, the same words she had repeated for 3 months straight until he finally agreed to this. Maria, his head chef, his late wife's closest friend, the only person besides Victor who dared to speak to him like he was still human. "She's light, Dominic. The kind of light you need. Just one date. One coffee. What do you have to lose?" Everything, he had wanted to say. Everything and nothing, because he had already lost it all 3 years ago. His jaw tightened as the memory surfaced: uninvited Isabella's laugh, Isabella's warmth, Isabella bleeding out in his arms while he screamed for help that came too late. The ambush had been meant for him. She had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, loving the wrong man. After her death, Dominic had buried his heart in the same grave. He attended galas with beautiful women on his arm, smiled for cameras, played the part of the charming bachelor, but he never let anyone close, never let anyone in, until Maria wore him down with her relentless hope. Across the cafe, Victor Kozlov sat at a distant table, pretending to read a newspaper. The Russian bodyguard's eyes swept the room in regular intervals, a habit born from years of protecting Dominic through situations far more dangerous than a blind date. Tonight, Dominic had ordered him to stay invisible. No intervention, no intimidation. "Just watch." Victor had raised an eyebrow at that. In 10 years, his boss had never asked to be left vulnerable. Dominic checked his watch again. 6:51 p.m. 21 minutes. He lifted his teacup, found it cold, and set it down with a quiet click. The cafe hummed with conversation around him, couples leaning close, friends laughing, the gentle clink of porcelain. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere, with someone. He was the only person sitting alone. 5 more minutes, Dominic told himself. 5 more minutes, and he would return to his world, a world of shadows and control, where hope was a liability, and love was a weapon others could use against you. He had been foolish to think anything could be different. The bell above the door chimed. Dominic looked up, his heart betraying him with a single skip. But it wasn't a woman who walked through that door. It was 2 little girls, twins, no older than 5 or 6, with long black hair that bounced as they moved and brown eyes so large they seemed to hold entire universes. They wore matching pink dresses with white ribbons, and their small hands were clasped together like they were about to face a dragon. They scanned the cafe with startling intensity, and then those eyes landed on Dominic. Before he could process what was happening, the 2 girls marched straight toward his table with the determination of tiny soldiers on a mission, as if they had been searching for him their entire lives, and had finally found him. The taller twin, by perhaps half an inch, stopped directly in front of Dominic's table. She planted her small feet firmly on the polished floor, tilted her chin up, and looked at him with an expression so serious it belonged on a courtroom judge, not a 5-year-old in a pink dress. "Are you Mr. Ashford?" Her voice rang out clear and confident, cutting through the cafe's ambient chatter like a bell. Dominic's instincts kicked in before his brain caught up. His eyes swept the room in a fraction of a second, scanning exits, checking faces, searching for anyone who might have sent children as a distraction or a trap. In his world, innocence was often a mask for danger. But he saw nothing, just curious glances from nearby patrons, the barista wiping down the counter, and Victor at his corner table, frozen mid-page turn with an expression of utter bewilderment. Dominic returned his gaze to the little girl. "I am." She nodded once, satisfied, then gestured to her sister, the slightly shorter one who stood half-hidden behind her, clutching her hand like a lifeline. "I'm Lily," the bold one announced. "This is Rose. We're Elena's sisters." Elena. The name hit Dominic like a wave. The woman he was supposed to meet. The woman Maria had described with such warmth in her voice. "She works harder than anyone I know." "Dominic," She's been through things that would break most people, but she just keeps going. She deserves someone who will see her, really see her. Rose, the shy one, peeked out from behind her sister, her brown eyes impossibly large. Elena says sorry she's late, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She got stuck at the hospital, Lily continued, taking over as clearly the designated spokesperson. There was a big emergency. A school bus crashed and lots of kids got hurt, so all the nurses had to stay. Dominic felt something shift in his chest, a sensation so unfamiliar it took him a moment to identify it. Relief. And beneath that, something warmer. She hadn't stood him up. She was saving children's lives. How did you know where to find me? He asked, genuinely curious now. Lily and Rose exchanged a glance, the kind of silent communication that only twins seemed capable of before Lily answered. We heard Elena talking on the phone last night, to Maria. She didn't know we were listening. A hint of mischief crossed her face. Elena was really nervous. She kept asking Maria what she should wear and if you would like her. Rose tugged on her sister's sleeve, then leaned forward conspiratorially. She put on her prettiest dress this morning, the blue one with the flowers. She hid it in her locker at the hospital so she could change before meeting you. The image formed in Dominic's mind, unbidden, a woman rushing through hospital corridors, stealing moments between emergencies to worry about a dress, about making a good impression on a stranger. On him, Elena really wanted to come, Lily said, her voice dropping to something softer, more vulnerable. She circled today on the calendar. She never circles anything. Dominic's throat tightened. So we told Mrs. Chen she's our babysitter that we needed to come here, Lily continued, straightening up with renewed determination. We told her it was very, very important. We didn't want you to think Elena forgot about you, or that she didn't want to come. Rose nodded vigorously. We didn't want you to be sad. The words landed somewhere deep in Dominic's chest, in a place he had thought was long dead. He looked at these two little girls standing before him, hands clasped together, pink dresses slightly rumpled, eyes filled with earnest concern for a man they had never met. They had orchestrated this entire intervention, not for themselves, but because they didn't want a stranger to feel abandoned. When was the last time anyone had cared whether he was hurt? When was the last time anyone had tried to protect his feelings? And here were two 5-year-olds who knew nothing about him, nothing about the blood on his hands, the darkness in his past, the empire of shadows he commanded. To them, he was simply a man waiting alone in a cafe, a man their sister cared about, a man who deserved not to feel forgotten. Dominic looked at them, really looked, and felt something crack open inside him, something he had kept locked away for 3 long years. Would you like to sit with me? The words left Dominic's mouth before he fully realized what he was offering. He gestured to the chairs across from him, and Lily's face broke into a triumphant grin, as if she had just won a battle she had been preparing for her entire short life. Yes, please, she said politely, pulling out a chair for Rose first before climbing into her own. Their feet dangled several inches above the floor. Dominic caught the barista's attention. 2 hot chocolates, please. Extra whipped cream. Extra, extra? Lily asked hopefully. Despite himself, Dominic felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Extra, extra. From across the cafe, Victor had completely abandoned the pretense of reading his newspaper. The Russian bodyguard stared at his boss with an expression that suggested he was witnessing either a miracle or a hallucination. In 10 years of service, he had never not once seen Dominic Ashford order hot chocolate for anyone, let alone engage in conversation with children. The drinks arrived in oversized ceramic mugs, topped with mountains of whipped cream that threatened to avalanche onto the table. Lily and Rose accepted them with wide eyes, wrapping their small hands around the warm cups. Thank you, Mr. Ashford, Rose whispered. Dominic, he corrected gently. You can call me Dominic. Lily took a careful sip, leaving a perfect white mustache across her upper lip. Elena talks about you sometimes. Well, she talks to Maria about you. She thinks you sound nice. Does she? Maria says you're sad but good. She says you need someone to remind you how to smile. Lily paused, considering. Do you not know how to smile? Because we could teach you. Rose is really good at making funny faces. Rose demonstrated immediately, scrunching up her nose and crossing her eyes. It was ridiculous and adorable and completely unexpected. And Dominic laughed. It wasn't a polite chuckle or a calculated social response. It was a real laugh rusty from disuse, pulled from somewhere deep in his chest that he had forgotten existed. The sound startled him almost as much as it startled Victor, who visibly flinched at his corner table. When was the last time he had laughed like that? Before Isabella. Maybe not even then. Lily beamed, clearly pleased with their success. But then her expression shifted, becoming more somber, and Dominic sensed they were approaching something important. Elena works really hard, Lily said quietly, stirring her hot chocolate. She used to be in medical school. She wanted to be a real doctor. But then, she trailed off, and Rose picked up the thread, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mommy and Daddy went to heaven 2 years ago. There was a car accident." The words hung in the air between them. Dominic's chest tightened. He knew that pain. He knew exactly how it felt to have the world shatter in an instant, to have someone you loved ripped away without warning or mercy. "Elena quit school," Lily continued. "She became a nurse instead because it was faster, so she could take care of us. She looked down at her cup. She does everything for us. She makes us breakfast and helps with homework and reads us stories every night." Rose's lower lip trembled slightly. Sometimes she cries. When she thinks we're sleeping, we hear her in the kitchen, trying to be quiet. The image pierced something in Dominic, this woman he had never met, crying alone in a dark kitchen, carrying the weight of 2 little lives on her shoulders while grieving parents she had lost too soon. He understood that loneliness, the kind that settled into your bones at 3 a.m., the kind that no amount of money or power could touch. "Elena never goes on dates," Lily said, matter of fact. "She says she doesn't have time. She says we're more important than anything else." She paused, and when she looked up at Dominic, her brown eyes held a wisdom far beyond her years. "But we know she's lonely. She tries to hide it, but we can tell." Both girls had whipped cream smeared across their faces, now on their noses, their cheeks, even somehow in their eyebrows. They looked like tiny, serious old men discussing matters of great importance, completely unaware of how absurd they appeared. And that only made them more endearing. Rose set down her mug carefully and looked directly at Dominic. Her gaze was unnervingly perceptive for a 5-year-old, as if she could see straight through his expensive vest and carefully constructed walls. "Are you sad too?" she asked quietly. "Your eyes look like Elena's eyes, like something is missing inside." Rose's question sliced through Dominic like a blade. For a moment, he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The cafe around him seemed to blur and fade, replaced by memories he had spent 3 years trying to bury. The warehouse, the ambush, bullets tearing through the night air, Isabella's scream cut short, her body crumpling against him. The blood, so much blood, spreading across her white dress like crimson flowers blooming in fast forward. Dominic, her voice, barely a whisper, her hand reaching for his face. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. He held her as the light faded from her eyes, held her as her breath stuttered and stopped, held her long after she was gone, screaming for help that came too late, begging a God he didn't believe in to give her back. They had been married for 2 years. They had been trying for a baby. She had just told him that morning that she wanted to start a family soon, that she couldn't wait to fill their house with children's laughter. She never got the chance. "Dominic?" Lily's voice pulled him back. Both twins were watching him with concern, their hot chocolates forgotten. He blinked, forcing the memories back into their cage. His hands were trembling slightly. He pressed them flat against the table to still them. "Are you okay?" Rose asked softly. Dominic looked at her, this tiny girl with whipped cream on her nose and ancient wisdom in her eyes. She had asked if he was sad, if something was missing inside him. He couldn't lie to her, didn't want to. "Maybe I am like your sister," he said quietly. "Maybe we both have pieces missing." Lily nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense. "Then you and Elena should be together. 2 sad people can make each other happy again." The simplicity of it stunned him. In Dominic's world, everything was complicated. Every relationship was a transaction. Every kindness had strings attached. Every person wanted something from him. He had built walls so high that even sunlight couldn't reach him anymore. But this 5-year-old had just handed him a truth so pure it hurt. 2 sad people can make each other happy again. "Elena is the best sister in the whole world," Lily continued, sensing that the heavy moment had passed. "She sings to us every night before bed. Mommy's songs. She knows all of them. And she makes heart pancakes on Sundays," Rose added, finally smiling again, "with chocolate chips for eyes and whipped cream for smiles. She teaches us important things too," Lily said, "like how to be brave even when you're scared, and how to be kind even when people are mean." She paused, reciting something she had clearly memorized. "Family is everything. That's what Elena always says. Family is everything, and we take care of each other no matter what." Dominic listened as the twins painted a portrait of their sister not with colors and brushes, but with stories and love. Each detail added another dimension to the woman he had yet to meet. Elena who sang lullabies in a dark apartment. Elena who made heart-shaped pancakes every Sunday morning. Elena who had given up her dreams to become everything for 2 little girls who had lost their world. She wasn't just a nurse, he realized. She was mother and father and protector and provider. She was the entire universe for these 2 children, holding them together with nothing but love and determination. And she was probably exhausted, and lonely, and terrified of letting anyone see how much she was struggling, just like him. A buzzing in his pocket interrupted his thoughts. Dominic pulled out his phone and saw a message from an unknown number. I'm so sorry. This is Elena. Maria gave me your number. I just finished my shift. Are you still there? He stared at the screen, then looked at Lily and Rose. They were trying to scrape the last bits of whipped cream from their mugs, completely unaware of the message. These two little girls had walked into a cafe to protect a stranger's feelings. They had shared their family's story with open hearts, trusting him with their secrets, their pain, their hope. And now their sister was reaching out, probably terrified that she had ruined everything before it even began. Dominic's thumb hovered over the keyboard. For 3 years, he had ignored every attempt anyone made to get close. He had deleted messages unread, declined invitations without consideration, kept the world at arm's length where it couldn't hurt him again. But tonight, 2 little girls with hot chocolate mustaches had cracked something open. He began to type. I'm still here. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. He hit send, and for the first time in 3 years, Dominic Ashford smiled while texting a woman. The bell above the door chimed again at 7:23 p.m. Dominic looked up from the coloring page Lily had convinced him to help with. She had insisted he color the princess's dress while she handled the castle, and the breath caught in his throat. A woman stood in the doorway, chest heaving, dark hair escaping from a messy ponytail. She wore a thick winter coat hastily thrown over hospital scrubs, the blue fabric still visible at her collar and wrists. Her cheeks were flushed from running, her eyes wide and slightly panicked as they swept across the cafe. And then those eyes found her sister's. Elena Reyes froze. For a long moment, she simply stared at Lily and Rose, sitting comfortably with a strange man, empty hot chocolate mugs before them, whipped cream still smeared on their faces, the coloring page, the crayons scattered across the marble table, her sister's relaxed postures, their obvious ease with someone they had never met. Then her gaze shifted to Dominic. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, electric and undeniable, a spark that seemed to suspend time itself. Later, Dominic wouldn't be able to explain what he felt in that moment. Recognition, perhaps, as if some part of him had been waiting for her without knowing it. Elena moved first, rushing toward the table with apologies already tumbling from her lips. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. The bus accident. There were 17 children. We lost 2 in surgery, but the others I couldn't leave. I couldn't just, and then these 2. She turned to her sisters, her voice pitching higher. What are you doing here? How did you even Mrs. Chen was supposed to keep you home? We had an important mission, Lily said calmly. A mission? What mission? You can't just... Elena pressed her hands to her face, then looked at Dominic with mortification burning in her cheeks. I'm so sorry. This isn't I was going to change. I had a dress. I planned everything, and now I'm standing here in scrubs looking like I just walked out of a disaster zone because I literally did. And my sisters apparently conducted some kind of covert operation, Elena. Dominic's voice was quiet, but it cut through her rambling instantly. He rose from his chair, moved around the table, and pulled out the seat beside him. You spent the last 8 hours saving children's lives, he said. There's nothing to apologize for. Elena blinked. You knew? Your sisters told me. He gestured to the chair, a gentle invitation. They also told me you were nervous about tonight, that you circled the date on your calendar, that you had a dress hidden in your locker. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. They were very thorough. Elena turned to her sisters with an expression somewhere between exasperation and grudging admiration. Exactly how much did you 2 tell him? Only the important things, Rose said innocently. Before Elena could respond, both girls slid off their chairs and launched themselves at her, wrapping their small arms around her waist in a fierce hug. Elena, he's really nice, Lily stage whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. He bought us hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. And he laughed at Rose's funny face. Rose added proudly, he has a nice laugh. He should laugh more. Elena looked down at her sisters, these 2 tiny conspirators who had apparently orchestrated an entire romantic intervention, and Dominic saw the exhaustion in her eyes. But beneath that, something else. Relief, gratitude, a flicker of hope she was trying desperately to hide. She sank into the chair Dominic had offered, her shoulders finally relaxing for what might have been the first time all day. I'm sorry about them, she said quietly, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. They mean well, but they don't always understand boundaries. They understood perfectly, Dominic replied, returning to his seat. They didn't want me to think you had forgotten, or that you didn't care. He paused. They were protecting both of us, in their way. Elena's eyes glistened unexpectedly. She looked at Lily and Rose, who had climbed back into their chairs and were watching the adults with barely contained excitement. These 2 are very proud of their sister, Dominic continued. They told me about the pancakes, the lullabies, the important lessons. His voice softened. They told me you're their whole world. A single tear escaped down Elena's cheek before she could catch it. She wiped it away quickly, but Dominic had seen, and in that small gesture of vulnerability, he saw himself. Elena looked at the man before her, the expensive vest, the luxury watch, the air of quiet power that surrounded him. By all appearances, he belonged to a different universe than hers. But his eyes looked at Lily and Rose with a tenderness that made her chest ache. Not the polite tolerance most adults showed toward children, but genuine warmth, as if they had somehow become precious to him in the short time they had been together. And when he turned that gaze to her and smiled, really smiled, not the polished social smile she had expected, Elena felt something shift inside her. A wall she had built brick by brick over 2 years of grief and exhaustion and lonely nights. That wall began to crack, and her frozen heart, so carefully protected, began to thaw. The cafe had grown crowded as evening settled over Boston, and Dominic watched Elena shift uncomfortably as a group of loud college students claimed the table nearby. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and he realized she probably hadn't eaten since morning. "Have you had dinner?" he asked. Elena shook her head. "I was going to grab something from the vending machine at the hospital, but then the bus accident happened and..." She trailed off with a tired shrug. Dominic made a decision. "I own a restaurant nearby, Ashford's. The kitchen is still open, and it would be much quieter." He paused, sensing her hesitation. "The girls could have something proper to eat, and you could rest somewhere more comfortable than a cafe chair." Elena's brow furrowed slightly. She glanced at Lily and Rose, then back at Dominic, this man she had known for less than an hour, who was now inviting her and her sisters to his restaurant. "I don't know you," she said carefully. Not accusatory, just honest. "You don't," Dominic agreed. "But Maria does. She's my head chef. She's the one who arranged this meeting." He held Elena's gaze steadily. "I promise you, your safety and theirs is my absolute priority. You have nothing to fear from me." There was something in his voice when he said it, a weight, a sincerity that went beyond mere reassurance. Elena had spent years learning to read people in the emergency room, the liars, the abusers, the ones who hid darkness behind charming smiles. Dominic Ashford was hiding something. She could sense that much. But not cruelty, not danger. Whatever shadows he carried, they weren't aimed at her. "Okay," she heard herself say. Lily and Rose cheered. Ashford's occupied a corner, building 3 blocks away, all exposed brick and warm lighting, and the rich aroma of garlic and fresh bread. The maître d' nearly tripped over himself when Dominic walked in, but a subtle gesture sent the man scurrying away without a word. They were led to a private table in the back, separated from the main dining room by a beautiful wrought iron partition covered in climbing ivy. It was intimate without being claustrophobic, elegant without being intimidating. And then, Maria Santos appeared. She was a round woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a bun and laugh lines that spoke of a life well lived. When she saw Elena, her entire face transformed with joy. Finally, you come!" Maria rushed forward and pulled Elena into a crushing embrace. "Look at you, my dear. So beautiful, so grown up. Your mother would be so proud." Elena's eyes welled with tears. "Maria, I didn't know you were. I didn't realize you knew Dominic." "Knew him? I've been feeding this stubborn man for 8 years, trying to put some happiness into his life." Maria pulled back, holding Elena at arm's length. "Your mama and I were like sisters. You know this. When she passed, I wanted to reach out, but I didn't want to intrude on your grief." Her voice softened. "I've been watching from far away, waiting for the right moment, and when I saw how both of you were suffering alone, well, Maria Santos does not sit by when there is love to be made." "Maria," Dominic warned, but there was no real heat in it. The older woman ignored him completely, turning her attention to Lily and Rose. "And who are these beautiful princesses? Are you hungry? Maria will make you the best pizza you have ever tasted. Special recipe. Come to the kitchen with me. You can help with the cheese." The twins looked at Elena for permission. When she nodded, they scrambled after Maria with excited squeals, leaving Dominic and Elena alone for the first time. A comfortable silence settled between them. "She's not subtle," Dominic said finally. Elena laughed, a real laugh, tired but genuine. "Neither were my sisters, apparently." She shook her head, still marveling at the evening's strange turns. "I can't believe they did this. I can't believe they found you. They were worried you'd think I gave up on you. They were worried I'd think you gave up on me." Dominic paused. "They're remarkably perceptive for 5-year-olds. They've had to grow up fast." Elena's smile faded. "After our parents died, everything changed. I was in my 3rd year of medical school. I had to drop out, find work immediately. The life insurance barely covered the funeral costs and 6 months of rent." She spoke matter-of-factly, as if reciting someone else's history, but Dominic heard the pain beneath the words. "I got my nursing certification as fast as I could. Started working double shifts, triple shifts, sometimes. Her fingers traced the edge of her water glass. I don't regret it. Not for a second. But some days you wonder what your life might have been, Dominic finished quietly. Elena looked up, startled by how precisely he understood. You're strong, he said, his voice barely above a murmur, but you don't have to be alone forever. Her lips parted, a protest forming automatically the same deflection she had used 100 times when well-meaning friends suggested she needed help, needed rest, needed to let someone in. But the words died in her throat, because Dominic's gray eyes held hers with such profound understanding, such recognition of her hidden exhaustion and secret fears, that she couldn't look away. It was as if he could see straight through to the lonely, grieving girl she kept locked away behind her armor of competence and self-sufficiency. And instead of running from what he saw, he leaned closer. Maria returned with the twins and an enormous pizza, the cheese still bubbling and the aroma filling the private dining space. Lily and Rose climbed into their seats with barely contained excitement, eyes fixed on the food like they had never seen anything so magnificent. Elena reached for the pizza cutter, but Dominic was faster. Allow me, he said, already sliding a slice onto Lily's plate. He cut it into smaller, manageable pieces without being asked, then did the same for Rose. When Rose reached too eagerly and got tomato sauce on her cheek, Dominic simply picked up a napkin and wiped it away, a gesture so natural, so effortless, that Elena felt her heart stutter. She watched him throughout the meal, unable to look away. He listened when Lily rambled about her favorite cartoon characters. He nodded seriously when Rose whispered about the butterfly she had seen at school. He caught Lily's cup before it could tip over, refilled Rose's water without her needing to ask, and somehow managed to keep track of both conversations while also making sure Elena's wine glass was never empty. It was like watching someone who had been doing this their entire life. Do you have children? Elena heard herself ask. The question hung in the air. Dominic's hand stilled over his plate, and something flickered across his face there and gone in an instant. But Elena caught it. Pain. Deep, old, unhealed pain. No, he said quietly. I don't. Elena waited, sensing there was more. Dominic set down his fork. He stared at his plate for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was rough around the edges. I was married. Her name was Isabella. The name seemed to cost him something. She was a preschool teacher. She loved children more than anything in the world. She used to talk about having 4, maybe 5. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She said she wanted a house so full of noise and laughter that we'd never feel lonely. Elena's chest tightened. She passed away 3 years ago, Dominic continued. We never got the chance to have the family she dreamed of. I'm sorry, Elena whispered, and she meant it with every fiber of her being, because she knew that grief. She lived with it every day, the phantom presence of people who should still be there, the empty chairs at the table, the silence where laughter used to be. She would have loved them, Dominic said suddenly, his gaze drifting to Lily and Rose. They were oblivious to the adult conversation, engaged in a heated debate about whether unicorns were real. Isabella, she would have adored your sisters. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Without thinking, Elena reached across the table and placed her hand over his. It was a small gesture, instinctive, human, meant to comfort. But when her fingers touched his skin, Dominic went completely still. He stared down at her hand as if it were something precious and fragile, something he was afraid to touch for fear of breaking it. Neither of them moved. Neither of them breathed. And then Dominic turned his hand over, palm up, and gently closed his fingers around hers. Not trapping, not demanding, just holding. A connection neither of them had realized they were starving for. Thank you, he said softly, for not looking at me with pity. I've had enough pity to last a lifetime. Pity is for people who can't understand, Elena replied. I understand. They stayed like that for a moment longer, two broken people holding hands across a table while pizza grew cold and the world continued spinning around them. Elena. Lily's voice shattered the moment. Both adults pulled back, though Elena felt the ghost of Dominic's warmth lingering on her palm. Elena. We really like Mr. Dominic, Lily announced with the gravity of someone delivering a state address. You should go on more dates with him. Rose nodded vigorously, sauce smeared across her chin again. He's nice, and he doesn't talk to us like we're babies, and he cut our pizza really good. Elena felt heat rush to her cheeks. Lily, you can't just we vote yes, Lily continued, undeterred. 2 votes. That's a majority. That's not how democracy. Elena, you taught us about democracy. Elena opened her mouth to explain that dating decisions were not, in fact, subject to democratic processes, but then she caught Dominic's expression. He was smiling, not the polished, controlled smile he had worn when she first arrived, not the sad, distant smile that had flickered across his face when he spoke of Isabella. This was something different, something warm and genuine and surprised, as if he had forgotten his face could move that way. It was the first smile that reached his eyes all evening. And looking at him, this man who had lost his wife, who carried grief like a second skin, who somehow still managed to cut pizza for 2 little girls with such tenderness, Elena felt the last of her resistance crumble. Maybe, she heard herself say, maybe we could do this again sometime. Dominic's smile widened, and across the table, Lily and Rose exchanged triumphant looks, their secret mission more successful than they ever could have imagined. The sunflowers arrived on a Tuesday. Elena was in the middle of charting a patient's vitals when one of the other nurses tapped her shoulder, grinning knowingly. Someone's got an admirer. A massive bouquet sat at the nurse's station, bright yellow sunflowers bursting from a crystal vase, their faces turned toward the fluorescent lights as if searching for the sun. The card was simple. Lily told me these are your favorite. She wasn't wrong about anything else, so I trusted her. Elena pressed the card to her chest and smiled so wide her cheeks hurt. That was the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, their lives began to intertwine in ways neither had expected. Text messages, at first short, tentative exchanges that grew longer as the days passed. Elena would send him photos of particularly absurd emergency room moments. Dominic would respond with pictures of elaborate dishes Maria was testing, asking for her vote. They talked about everything and nothing. Childhood memories, favorite books, the dreams they had abandoned, and the ones they still secretly harbored. I wanted to be a doctor, Elena texted one night. A pediatric surgeon. I was going to save children's lives in operating rooms, not just patch them up in the ER. You still save lives, Dominic replied. The method doesn't diminish the miracle. She stared at that message for a long time, tears blurring the words. Their second date was chaos in the best possible way. Dominic showed up at Elena's apartment in a town car, dressed in jeans and a sweater the most casual she had ever seen him. When Lily demanded to know where they were going, he simply smiled and said, "Somewhere with cotton candy." The amusement park was crowded and loud and absolutely perfect. Dominic won a giant teddy bear at the ring toss. It took him 14 tries, and Elena suspected he could have done it in 2 if pride hadn't gotten in the way. He presented it to Lily with exaggerated formality, and she named it Sir Fluffington on the spot. Rose preferred the carousel. Dominic rode beside her 3 times, holding her hand when the painted horse went too fast, never once complaining about the dizziness. Victor trailed them at a distance, blending into the crowd with practiced ease. Later that evening, he stood in Maria's kitchen at Ashford's, watching his boss through the security footage on his phone. "I've never seen him like this," Victor said, his Russian accent thickening with emotion. "In 10 years. Never. He's becoming alive again." Maria smiled, adding oregano to her sauce. Love does that, even to men who think they're made of stone. The late-night calls started in the second week. Elena's phone would ring at 2 a.m., sometimes 3 a.m., and she always answered. Dominic never explained why he couldn't sleep, and she never asked. She simply talked to him about her day, about the twins, about the patient who had made her laugh or the one who had made her cry. Sometimes he talked back. Sometimes he just listened to her voice, and she could hear his breathing slowly even out until he drifted off mid-sentence. She never hung up first. She would set the phone on her pillow, letting the connection stay open until morning, so he wouldn't wake up alone. Then came the Sunday mornings. Dominic appeared at her door at 8 a.m. sharp, arms full of grocery bags, flour dusting his expensive coat. "Lily informed me that Sunday pancakes are a sacred tradition," he announced. "She also informed me that my pancake-making skills are, and I quote, probably trash." "She's not wrong," Elena laughed, stepping aside to let him in. That first Sunday, he burned half the batch and set off the smoke alarm. Lily declared his pancakes edible, barely. Rose ate 4 anyway. By the 3rd Sunday, he had perfected heart shapes. By the 4th, he was attempting butterflies while Lily supervised with brutal honesty. Elena would watch him from the kitchen doorway, this powerful man covered in batter, arguing with a 5-year-old about proper pancake flipping technique, and feel something dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope. She was falling for him, falling fast and hard and terrifyingly deep. And Dominic was falling too. She could see it in the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, in the way his hand lingered on her waist when he said goodbye, in the way he texted her good morning every single day without fail. But there were things Elena didn't know. She didn't know that the restaurant was a front for something far darker. She didn't know that the man who made pancakes for her sisters commanded an empire built on shadows. She didn't know about the violence he was capable of, the enemies he had made, the blood that stained his hands. And she didn't know that somewhere in the depths of that empire, a snake was stirring. A trusted lieutenant with 10 years of loyalty, or so Dominic believed, was meeting in secret with dangerous men. Plans were being made. Money was changing hands. And the very darkness Dominic had tried to keep away from Elena was already creeping toward her door. The warehouse at the edge of South Boston's Port District smelled of salt, rust, and rotting fish. It was the kind of place respectable people avoided, The kind of place where deals were made in darkness and witnesses had a way of disappearing. Marcus Webb stood in the center of the empty space, hands shoved in his coat pockets, watching the door. He had worked for Dominic Ashford for 10 years. A decade of loyalty, of following orders without question, of watching lesser men rise to positions of power, while he remained exactly where he started, managing the port operations, overseeing shipments, handling the dirty work that kept Dominic's hands clean. 10 years, and what did he have to show for it? A modest apartment, a used car, the same salary he'd been making 5 years ago, while Dominic dined in 5-star restaurants and drove cars worth more than Marcus's entire life savings. The door creaked open. Raymond Cross entered like a man who owned every room he walked into. He was tall and lean, with silver hair slicked back from a face that might have been handsome once, before cruelty carved permanent lines around his mouth and eyes. His suit was immaculate, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, and his smile never quite reached his gaze. Cross ran one of the largest human trafficking operations on the eastern seaboard. Women, children, anyone who could be sold, he sold. Anyone who couldn't be sold, he disposed of. It was business, he always said, nothing personal. Marcus. Cross's voice echoed in the empty warehouse. You're early. I appreciate punctuality. You said this couldn't wait. It can't. Cross gestured, and 2 of his men materialized from the shadows, carrying a briefcase. They set it on a rusted metal table and opened it, revealing stacks of cash that made Marcus's breath catch. 200,000, Cross said. Half now, half when the shipment clears. All you need to do is make sure Ashford's people look the other way when my containers come through. Marcus stared at the money, more than he'd made in 5 years working for Dominic. More than enough to disappear to start over, somewhere warm, somewhere far from Boston's cold streets and colder power games. What's in the containers? He asked, though he already knew. Cross's smile widened. Does it matter? It should have. Marcus knew that. He had watched Dominic refuse deals like this for years, watched him turn down millions because he had rules lines he wouldn't cross. No drugs in schools, no violence against civilians, and absolutely, under any circumstances, no trafficking of women and children. Dominic called it honor. Marcus called it weakness. 15 units in this shipment, Cross continued, using the dehumanizing term his operation preferred. Mostly children. High value. They'll be processed and moved within 48 hours. All I need is clear passage through the port. 15 children, locked in a metal container, waiting to be sold. Marcus felt nothing. Ashford's been distracted lately, he said instead. There's a woman, a nurse. He's obsessed with her, takes her kids to amusement parks, makes them pancakes on Sundays. He snorted. The great Dominic Ashford, brought low by a pretty face and 2 brats. Cross raised an eyebrow. Love makes men stupid. It makes them vulnerable. Marcus picked up one of the cash bundles, fanning through the bills. Keep him focused on the woman, and he won't notice what's happening at the port. I'll handle the schedules, the paperwork, everything. And if he notices anyway? Marcus set the money down. He won't. But if he does, Cross's eyes had gone flat. Reptilian. Ashford isn't a man who forgives betrayal. I need assurances. For a moment, Marcus hesitated. What he was about to say would burn every bridge he had ever built. There would be no coming back from this, no explanation, no excuse, no mercy, if Dominic ever discovered the truth. But $200,000 could buy a lot of distance. If Ashford becomes a problem, Marcus said slowly, I know his weakness now, the nurse, Elena Reyes, and those 2 little girls she's raising. Cross's smile returned, colder than before. Go on. He's in love with them, all 3 of them. It's pathetic. Really, the man used to be untouchable. And now he's building blanket forts and cutting pizza into little pieces. Marcus shook his head with disgust. If we need leverage, they're the leverage. He'd burn his own empire to the ground before he let anything happen to them. The warehouse fell silent except for the distant sound of waves against the pier. Cross studied Marcus for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good. That's good information to have. He gestured to the briefcase. Take it. The shipment arrives in 3 days. I trust you'll make sure everything goes smoothly. Marcus grabbed the briefcase, feeling its weight like a promise. And if Ashford finds out? Cross asked one final time, his voice soft as poison. If he discovers what we're doing before the shipment clears? Marcus met his gaze without flinching. He won't have time to do anything about it, and if he tries, a cold smile crossed his face. I know exactly where to find the nurse and those 2 little girls. Ashford would do anything to protect them. Anything. The emergency room at St. Michael's Hospital never truly slept. Elena checked her watch 3:17 a.m. and took a long sip of cold coffee. She had been on her feet for 9 hours straight, moving between patients with the mechanical efficiency that came from years of practice. A broken arm in Bay 2, food poisoning in Bay 5. An elderly man with chest pains, who turned out to be having a panic attack about his wife's upcoming surgery. The usual chaos of a Thursday night. She was updating charts at the nurse's station when the ambulance sirens cut through the quiet. 2 paramedics burst through the doors, wheeling a gurney between them. Female, approximately 8 years old, one of them called out. Found unconscious near the harbor, severe malnutrition, multiple contusions, signs of prolonged physical abuse. No ID, no parents, no one reported her missing. Elena's heart clenched as she rushed to meet them. The girl on the gurney was painfully thin, bones visible beneath papery skin, dark circles carved beneath her closed eyes. Her clothes were filthy, torn, several sizes too big, and on her wrists, barely visible beneath the dirt, were raw red marks, ligature marks, from being restrained. "Get her to Bay 1, Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the horror churning in her stomach. "I need a full workup, blood panel, x-rays, everything. Page Dr. Harrison." The next hour was a blur of medical procedures and careful documentation. The girl regained consciousness briefly, but she wouldn't speak. She flinched at every touch, every voice, every sudden movement. Her eyes dark and hollow darted around the room like a trapped animal searching for escape. Elena had seen abuse victims before. She knew the signs, knew the silence that trauma bred, but something about this felt different, bigger, darker. When the other staff cleared out to handle incoming patients, Elena pulled a chair beside the girl's bed and sat down slowly. "Hello, little one," she said softly in Spanish, her mother's language, the language of her childhood. "It's okay. You're safe now." The girl's eyes widened. For the first time, something other than fear flickered across her face. "Do you speak Spanish?" the girl whispered, her voice cracked from disuse. "Yes, my dear. My name is Elena. You're safe here. No one will hurt you." Tears spilled down the girl's hollow cheeks, and then, in a voice barely louder than breath, she began to speak. Her name was Sofia. She had been taken from her village in Guatemala 8 months ago, promised a better life in America, promised school and food and safety. Instead, she had been locked in darkness, moved from place to place, kept with other children in rooms that smelled like metal and fear. "There are more," Sofia whispered, clutching Elena's hand with surprising strength. "More children, still there, in the place that smells like the ocean." Elena's blood ran cold. "Where? Sofia? Do you know where they're keeping them?" "Big buildings. Near the water. I could hear the boats." Sofia's grip tightened. "The men said they were going to sell us. Like things. Like we weren't people." Elena forced herself to stay calm, to keep her voice gentle even as rage and horror battled inside her chest. "Can you tell me anything about the men? What did they look like?" Sofia shook her head, trembling. "I didn't see faces. They kept it dark. But one of them." She touched her own neck. "He had a picture here. A snake. He was always on the phone, talking to someone he called the boss. A snake tattoo on the neck." Elena grabbed a notepad from her pocket and wrote everything down, her hand shaking slightly. Then she did exactly what protocol demanded. She reported to Dr. Harrison, who called hospital security, who called the police. 2 detectives arrived within the hour. Elena repeated everything Sofia had told her, watching them take notes with grim expressions. When they finished, she asked to take a photo of their report for her own records. "This is a federal matter now," one detective said. "Human trafficking task force will take over. You did the right thing, calling us immediately." But Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to do more. That somewhere in this city, other children like Sofia were waiting in the dark, terrified and alone. She stepped into the hallway, pulling out her phone. Dominic would want to know about this. He owned businesses near the harbor, restaurants, warehouses, shipping operations. Maybe he had seen something. Maybe he knew someone who could help. Her thumb hovered over his name in her contacts. She didn't notice the man at the end of the corridor dressed in scrubs he had stolen from a supply closet, a hospital ID badge clipped to his chest that didn't belong to him. He had been watching her all night, tracking her movements, listening through doors left slightly ajar, and when Elena raised her phone to call Dominic, he photographed every moment the number she dialed, the expression on her face, the notepad still clutched in her other hand. Then he slipped out a side exit and disappeared into the night, already composing a message to Marcus Webb. "We have a problem. The nurse knows. She's calling Ashford right now." Elena didn't call until morning. She had tried the night before, but Dominic's phone went straight to voicemail, probably in a meeting, she told herself. The kind of meeting that restaurant owners had at odd hours. The kind she didn't ask about because some part of her wasn't ready to know. At 7:15 a.m., exhausted from her shift but too wired to sleep, she finally reached him. "Elena." His voice was warm, concerned. "You sound tired. Long night?" "The longest." She pressed the phone tighter to her ear. curling up on her couch while Mrs. Chen got the twins ready for school in the next room. "Dominic, something happened. Something bad. I need to tell you about it." She told him everything. Sophia, the trafficking operation, the children locked away somewhere near the harbor, the police, the federal task force, the horror of looking into that little girl's eyes and seeing a childhood that had been stolen. When she finished, the line was silent. Seconds stretched into an eternity. "Dominic?" Elena's stomach tightened. "Are you still there?" "I'm here." His voice had changed. The warmth was gone, replaced by something harder, colder. "Tell me again about the man with the tattoo, the snake on his neck. Did she describe anything else about him?" Elena frowned, confused by the intensity of his questions. She said he was always on the phone, talking to someone he called the boss. She didn't see his face clearly. They kept the children in the dark. Silence again. Then Dominic spoke, each word careful and controlled. "Elena, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Don't talk to anyone else about this. Not your colleagues, not the police again, not anyone. Do you understand?" "What? Why?" "Because if what you're describing is happening near the harbor, there are people who will want to make sure no one finds out." His voice dropped lower. "People who might already know you were involved. I need you to be careful. Can you do that for me?" Fear crept up Elena's spine, not of Dominic, but of the unnamed danger lurking in his words. "You're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared." A pause. "I'm going to look into this. I have resources, contacts. If there's a trafficking operation running in this city, I will find it. But I need you safe while I do." "Dominic, what aren't you telling me?" The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Elena heard him exhale slowly, a man gathering himself, choosing his words. "Soon," he said finally. "I'll explain everything soon. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She should have pushed harder, should have demanded answers. But something in his voice, the raw edge of worry, the fierce protectiveness, made her hesitate. "I trust you," she whispered. "Thank you." His voice softened, just for a moment. "I'll call you tonight. Don't go anywhere alone until then." The line went dead. Dominic sat motionless in his office, phone still pressed to his ear long after Elena had hung up. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston's skyline glittered in the morning light, a city he had controlled for over a decade, a kingdom built on shadows and blood and rules that everyone knew better than to break. No drugs in schools, no violence against civilians, and absolutely, unequivocally, no trafficking of women and children. Those were his rules, his lines, the principles that separated him from the monsters who gave organized crime its darkest reputation. And now someone had crossed those lines. On his territory, under his nose, a snake tattoo on the neck. The image burned in Dominic's mind. He knew that tattoo, had seen it 1,000 times over the past decade, every time Marcus Webb rolled up his sleeves or loosened his collar. Marcus, his port manager, his trusted lieutenant, the man who handled shipments, schedules, everything that came in and out of South Boston's harbor. It couldn't be true, and yet Dominic's hand found his desk phone. He dialed a number from memory. Victor answered on the first ring. "Boss, I need you to investigate Marcus Webb." Dominic's voice was ice, quietly. "Every meeting he's taken in the past 3 months, every phone call, every transaction, every person he's spoken to. I want to know where he goes, who he sees, and what he's been hiding from me." A beat of stunned silence. "Marcus? But he's been with us for I know how long he's been with us." Dominic cut him off. "Do it anyway. And Victor? If you find what I think you're going to find, don't act on it. Come to me first." "Understood." The line clicked off. Dominic rose from his chair and walked to the window, staring out at the harbor in the distance. Somewhere out there, children were being held in darkness. Children like Lily and Rose, innocent, helpless, waiting for someone to save them. His hands curled into fists, knuckles white against the glass. "I will burn this entire world to the ground," he whispered, "if anyone touches those children." But beneath the rage, beneath the cold fury that had made him a legend in Boston's underworld, Dominic felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Fear. Not for himself, he had stopped fearing death the night Isabella died in his arms, but for Elena, for Lily, for Rose. The 3 people who had cracked open his frozen heart now stood in the crosshairs of something monstrous. And if Marcus was truly involved, then the danger was already closer than Dominic had ever imagined. 2 days. That was all it took for Marcus Webb's carefully constructed world to start crumbling. He noticed the signs immediately. A trusted informant, suddenly unavailable. A scheduled meeting mysteriously canceled. Victor Kozlov's car parked outside his apartment building at 2 a.m. when it had no business being there. Dominic was investigating him. Quietly, methodically, the way he did everything. which meant time had run out. Marcus made the call from a burner phone, standing in an alley 3 blocks from his apartment where no one would overhear. "We have a problem," he said the moment Cross answered. "Ashford's sniffing around. His Russian dog has been tailing me." Silence on the other end. Then Cross's voice, cold and calculating. "How much does he know?" "Not everything. Not yet. But he will. And soon." Marcus glanced over his shoulder, paranoia crawling up his spine. "We need to move up the timeline or abort entirely." "Aborting is not an option. The buyers are already in place. The shipment is worth $3 million. Cross paused. "No, we don't run. We leverage." "Leverage how?" "The nurse. The children." Cross's voice dropped to something almost amused. "You said they were his weakness. Time to prove it." Marcus felt a flicker of hesitation, not guilt. Exactly. But the pragmatic caution of a man who understood consequences. Kidnapping civilians was different from smuggling cargo. It escalated things. It made the situation personal. But then he thought about the money, the new life waiting for him, the chance to finally be free of Dominic Ashford's shadow. "What do you need me to do?" Cross gave him the instructions. Marcus listened, memorized, and destroyed the phone. The next afternoon was cold and gray, winter clouds hanging low over Boston like a funeral shroud. Elena had taken the day off to pick up Lily and Rose from school, a rare treat that had the twins bouncing with excitement all morning. They were going to the bakery for cupcakes, then home for a movie marathon. Normal things, family things. She never saw the van coming. It happened so fast. One moment she was walking down the sidewalk, each hand holding one of her sisters. The next, a black van screeched to a halt beside them, doors flying open. 3 men in masks. Elena's instincts kicked in before her mind could catch up. She shoved Lily and Rose behind her, positioning her body as a shield. "Run!" she screamed. "Run!" But they couldn't run. More men appeared from a parked car ahead, cutting off escape. Elena fought. She scratched and kicked and bit, landing a solid punch on one attacker's jaw before something hard connected with the back of her skull. The world exploded into stars. The last thing she heard before darkness swallowed her was her sisters screaming her name. When Elena woke, her head was pounding and her wrists were burning. She blinked against the dim light, trying to orient herself. A warehouse she could tell from the high ceilings. The concrete floor, the smell of rust and salt water. Industrial lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across empty space. Her hands were bound behind her back. Her ankles were tied to the chair legs. And on either side of her, in smaller chairs, sat Lily and Rose. They were crying silent, terrified tears streaming down their faces. Someone had tied their wrists in front of them. Smaller ropes for smaller prisoners. Girls. Elena's voice cracked. "Look at me. I'm here. I'm right here." "Elena," Rose sobbed. "I want to go home. I want to go home. I know, baby. I know." Elena fought against her restraints, ignoring the pain as the rope cut into her skin. "It's going to be okay. I promise. Everything is going to be okay." A voice cut through the darkness. "I wouldn't make promises you can't keep, Miss Reyes." Footsteps echoed across the concrete. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, muscular, with a cruel smile that didn't reach his eyes. And on his neck, crawling up from his collar like something alive, was a tattoo of a snake. Elena's blood turned to ice. "You," she breathed. "You're the one Sophia described." Marcus Webb tilted his head, mock-impressed. "The little girl talked? How unfortunate. For her, and for you." He crouched down to her eye level, close enough that she could smell cigarettes and cologne. "You should have minded your own business, nurse. Should have treated the girl and moved on. But you had to dig. Had to ask questions. Had to call your boyfriend. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me." Marcus's voice hardened. "I know you told Ashford. I know he's been investigating me because of you." He stood, straightening his jacket. "So now we're going to use you to send a message. Dominic will find us." Elena forced strength into her voice, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "He'll come for us. And when he does," Marcus laughed. A loud, genuine laugh that echoed off the warehouse walls and made Lily and Rose flinch. "Oh, sweetheart," he said, still chuckling. "I'm counting on it. That's exactly what I want him to do." He leaned close again, his smile turning predatory. "This isn't a kidnapping. It's a trap. And you 3 are the bait." Something was wrong. Dominic had called Elena 7 times in the past hour. Each call went straight to voicemail. Each unanswered ring tightened the knot in his chest. She always answered. Even during shifts, she would text back within minutes. Even when exhausted, she would send a quick message to let him know she was okay. Silence was not like her. By the 8th call, Dominic was already in his car, speeding through Boston streets with Victor in the passenger seat and a growing sense of dread clawing at his insides. Maybe her phone died. Victor offered, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. She was picking up the girls from school. Dominic's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. She would have charged it. She always charges it before she gets them. They reached Elena's apartment building in 12 minutes, a personal record that involved running 3 red lights and narrowly avoiding a delivery truck. Dominic was out of the car before it fully stopped, taking the stairs 3 at a time while Victor followed close behind. The apartment door was open. Not unlocked. Open. Hanging slightly ajar, the lock mechanism visibly damaged. Dominic's heart stopped. He pushed through the door, gun drawn, scanning the small living room with the precision of a man who had survived 100 ambushes. The furniture was overturned. A lamp lay shattered on the floor. Lily's backpack, the pink one with unicorns she had shown him so proudly, sat abandoned near the entrance, its contents spilled across the carpet. Signs of a struggle, signs of violence, signs that someone had taken them. Boss. Victor's voice came from the kitchen. There's blood here. Not much, but Dominic didn't hear the rest. A roaring sound filled his ears, drowning out everything except the image of Elena fighting, of Lily and Rose screaming, of his family being dragged away while he sat in his office, useless and unaware. His phone buzzed. Victor's report, the one he had requested 2 days ago. Dominic read it with shaking hands. Marcus Webb, multiple meetings with Raymond Cross over past 3 months, unusual cash deposits totaling $200,000, port schedules altered without authorization, container shipments rerouted through unofficial channels. Raymond Cross. The name was familiar, a trafficking kingpin who operated along the eastern seaboard, a man Dominic had refused to work with years ago because of his particular cargo preferences. Children. Cross specialized in children. And Marcus had been meeting with him, taking his money. Using Dominic's port to move his shipments, the betrayal hit like a physical blow. 10 years. 10 years of trust, of loyalty, of treating Marcus like family. And all along, the snake had been waiting for the right moment to strike. Something inside Dominic snapped. He swept his arm across the kitchen counter, sending dishes and appliances crashing to the floor. He grabbed the nearest chair and hurled it against the wall, watching it splinter into pieces. A guttural sound tore from his throat, not quite a scream, not quite a roar, but something primal and broken. Boss. Victor's hands gripped his shoulders, firm but not restraining. Dominic. Stop. He took them. Dominic's voice was raw, unrecognizable. He took them. Victor. My Elena. My girls. I know. And we will get them back. Victor's eyes were steel. But not like this. Not with rage. We need to think. We need a plan. Dominic stood in the wreckage of Elena's kitchen, chest heaving, fists bleeding from where he had struck the wall. Every instinct screamed at him to find Marcus immediately, to tear the city apart until he had his hands around the traitor's throat. But Victor was right. Marcus wasn't stupid. This was a trap, had to be. He would have prepared for Dominic's reaction, anticipated his fury, set up contingencies. Rushing in blind would get Elena and the twins killed. Dominic forced himself to breathe. In, out, in, out. He gathered the shattered pieces of his control and rebuilt them, brick by brick, until the cold, calculating mind that had built an empire reasserted itself over the desperate, terrified man beneath. Call everyone, he said, his voice now ice. Every soldier, every contact, every person who owes us a favor. I want every property connected to Raymond Cross identified within the hour. Warehouses, apartments, safe houses, everything. Victor nodded and pulled out his phone. Dominic's own phone buzzed again. A text from Marcus's number. No words, just an image. Elena, bound to a chair, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Her eyes were defiant even in captivity. Her body angled protectively in front of 2 smaller chairs where Lily and Rose sat crying, their tiny wrists tied with rope. Below the image, a message. Want to see them alive? Come alone. Midnight. Warehouse 17. South Harbor. Bring anyone else, and I start with the little ones. Dominic stared at the photo, at Elena's battered face and the twins' tears, and felt his heart crack open. I'm coming, he whispered to the screen, to them, to the universe that had dared to threaten the only light left in his darkness. I'm coming for you. And then so quietly that even Victor couldn't hear. And I will burn everyone who touched you until there is nothing left but ash. The war room at Ashford's restaurant had never seen a meeting like this. 12 men sat around the long table in the basement, Dominic's most trusted soldiers, handpicked over years of loyalty and proven competence. Victor stood at the head of the room, a detailed map of South Harbor projected onto the wall behind him. Dominic sat at the far end, unnaturally still. To anyone who didn't know him, he might have appeared calm, but the men in this room recognized the signs, the coiled tension in his shoulders, the flatness in his eyes, the way his fingers drummed a silent rhythm against his thigh. This was not the collected businessman they usually dealt with. This was something far more dangerous. Warehouse 17, Victor began, pointing to a structure on the map. Industrial storage facility. Abandoned for 3 years. Multiple entry points, main door here. Service entrance on the east side. Loading dock to the south. Roof access via external ladder. Security? Someone asked. Unknown. We have to assume Cross brought his own people. Estimate 15 to 20 armed hostiles. Dominic spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Marcus will expect me to come alone. He knows I would do anything to protect them. Which is exactly why you shouldn't go alone, Victor said carefully. I won't. Dominic stood, moving to the map, but I'll make them believe I did. I walk through the front door at midnight, exactly as instructed. No visible backup, no weapons drawn. I give them what they expect, a desperate man walking into a trap. He traced routes on the map with his finger. Meanwhile, Victor leads Team 1 through the service entrance. Team 2 positions on the roof. At my signal, you breach from all sides simultaneously. What's the signal? A soldier named Torres asked. I'll ask them if they believe in karma. A few confused glances were exchanged, but no one questioned it. Primary objective, Dominic continued, is extracting Elena and the twins. Everything else is secondary. Marcus and Cross, I want them alive. The room fell silent. Bruno, one of the older soldiers, leaned forward. Alive? Boss, with respect, these men took your woman, your family. In the old days, you would have the old days are over. The words cut through the room like a blade. Dominic's gaze swept across his men, ensuring he had their complete attention. There are 15 children locked in containers somewhere in that harbor. 15. Trafficked across borders, waiting to be sold like cattle. His voice was ice wrapped around fire. If we kill Marcus and Cross, we lose our chance to find them. We lose the evidence needed to dismantle their entire operation. And those children. He paused. Those children die in the dark. The men shifted uncomfortably. This was new, this consideration of consequences beyond their immediate world. And there's another reason. Dominic's voice dropped, something vulnerable cracking through the steel. Elena would never look at me the same way if I became a murderer for her. She sees something in me, something good. Something I thought died with Isabella. He met Victor's eyes. I won't prove her wrong. A long silence followed. Then Victor nodded slowly, something like respect or perhaps admiration flickering across his weathered face. You heard him. Alive. Non-lethal takedowns where possible. We're not executioners tonight. The men began checking their weapons, reviewing positions, preparing for the operation ahead. At 11:15 p.m., they started moving toward the vehicles, a convoy of black SUVs that would peel off at different points, approaching the warehouse from multiple directions. Dominic remained behind for a moment. He walked to his office, to the safe hidden behind a painting of the Boston skyline at night. His fingers found the combination without conscious thought, and the door swung open to reveal stacks of cash, documents, and tucked in the corner a small velvet box. He had bought the ring a week ago. A simple band with a modest diamond, nothing ostentatious, nothing that would make Elena uncomfortable. He had planned to propose at the end of the month, maybe during one of their Sunday morning pancake sessions, with Lily and Rose watching and giggling. Now he didn't know if he would ever get that chance. Dominic opened the box, staring at the ring that caught the dim light. Then he snapped it closed and slipped it into his breast pocket, right over his heart. Outside, Victor waited by the lead vehicle. Boss, it's time. Dominic climbed into the SUV, his hand pressing briefly against the small box in his pocket. I'm bringing you home, he whispered to the night, to Elena, to the universe that had taken so much from him already. And this time, I won't lose the person I love. The convoy pulled away, disappearing into the darkness toward South Harbor, toward war, toward redemption. The warehouse grew colder as night deepened. Elena had lost track of time, hours blurring together in the dim light, her wrists raw from testing the ropes that bound her. The guards had checked on them twice, each time leering at her with expressions that made her skin crawl, but they hadn't touched her. Not yet. Small mercies. Lily and Rose had cried themselves into exhaustion, their small bodies slumped in their chairs, but they wouldn't sleep. Every distant sound jolted them awake, eyes wild with terror. Elena couldn't bear it. Girls, she said softly, forcing calm into her voice that she didn't feel. Look at me, both of you. 2 pairs of brown eyes, mirrors of her own, turned toward her. Do you remember the story about the 3 sisters in the magic garden? The one Mama used to tell? Rose's lip trembled. The one where they had to be brave? That's the one. Elena smiled, even though her face ached and her heart was breaking. Once upon a time, there were 3 sisters who lived in a small cottage at the edge of a great forest. She told the story the way their mother had told it, with different voices for each character, with dramatic pauses and whispered secrets. Lily and Rose listened, their breathing slowly steadying, their tears drying on their cheeks. When the story ended, Elena began to sing, "Sleep now, my little one. Sleep now, my love." Their mother's lullaby, the song that had carried them through thunderstorms and nightmares, through fevers and first days of school. The melody wrapped around them like a blanket, and for a moment, just a moment, the warehouse felt less cold. "Elena?" Lily's voice was tiny in the darkness. "Yes, baby? Is Dominic going to come save us?" The question pierced Elena's heart. She wanted to lie, to promise that everything would be fine, that rescue was guaranteed, but she had never lied to her sisters. "I believe someone will come," she said carefully. "I believe we're going to be okay." Rose shifted in her chair, her small face thoughtful despite the fear. "I'm not scared." "Not really. You're not?" "Dominic looks at you the way Daddy used to look at Mama." Rose's voice held a certainty that belonged to someone much older. "Like you're the most important thing in the whole world. He won't leave us here. He won't." Elena felt tears threatening again, tears of grief for her parents, tears of love for these brave little girls, tears of desperate hope that Rose was right. "When did you get so wise?" she whispered. "Mama told me," Rose said simply. "In my dreams, she said to be brave, and that the people who love us will always find us." Before Elena could respond, footsteps echoed across the concrete. Marcus emerged from the shadows, checking his watch with theatrical boredom. Behind him, another man followed, older, silver-haired, with the cold eyes of a predator. "Raymond Cross." "Nearly midnight," Marcus announced. "Your boyfriend should be arriving soon. I hope he's punctual." Elena kept her expression neutral. But inside, hope flickered. Cross circled around them, studying Elena like merchandise. "This is the nurse? The one who caused all this trouble?" "The very same," Marcus smirked. Couldn't keep her nose out of things that didn't concern her. "Curious women are dangerous women." Cross stopped in front of Elena, tilting her chin up with one cold finger. "You should have let the little girl die in that hospital bed. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble." Elena jerked her face away. "I'm a nurse. I save people. That's what I do. Noble. Stupid, but noble." Cross released her and turned to Marcus. "What about the shipment? Loaded and ready." 15 units, as promised. 15 units. 15 children." Elena heard it, then faint, almost imperceptible, the sound of crying. Not from Lily or Rose, but from somewhere deeper in the warehouse. Multiple voices, small and terrified, coming from the direction of the loading dock. The containers. The children were in the containers. Sophia's words echoed in her memory. "There are more children. Still there." Rage ignited in Elena's chest, a fury so hot it burned away her fear. "You're monsters," she spat at Cross. "Those are children. Innocent children." Cross didn't even blink. "Those are commodities. And you," he gestured dismissively, "are bait. Nothing more." He walked away, barking orders at his men, and Marcus followed after one last mocking glance. Elena was left alone with her sisters, and the distant sound of children weeping. She closed her eyes, fighting the despair that threatened to swallow her. The ropes were too tight. The guards were too many. She was helpless completely, utterly helpless. But she was not hopeless. "Mama, Papa." The prayer rose unbidden from somewhere deep inside her. "If you can hear me, give me strength. I will protect my sisters. I will protect those children. No matter what happens to me." She opened her eyes, and they were dry. "Lily, Rose." Her voice was steady now. "Whatever happens next, I need you to be brave. Can you do that for me?" Both girls nodded, their small faces determined. "And I need you to remember something." Elena held their gazes, pouring every ounce of love she possessed into her words. "No matter what, I love you, more than anything in this world. And I will keep you safe, I promise." Outside, the clock crept toward midnight, and somewhere in the darkness, salvation was coming. The warehouse door groaned open at exactly midnight. Dominic Ashford walked through alone, hands empty and visible at his sides, exactly as instructed. His footsteps echoed across the concrete floor, steady, unhurried, the pace of a man who had accepted whatever fate awaited him. Inside, a dozen armed men formed a semicircle around the entrance, weapons trained on the single figure who dared to enter their domain. At the center stood Marcus Webb and Raymond Cross, both wearing expressions of smug satisfaction. Well, Cross's voice dripped with amusement. The great Dominic Ashford, ruler of South Boston, terror of the underworld. He spread his arms wide in mock welcome, brought to his knees by a nurse and 2 little girls. Dominic said nothing. His eyes moved past Cross, past the armed guards, searching there. In the far corner, illuminated by a single harsh light, Elena sat bound to a chair. Lily and Rose were beside her, their faces streaked with dried tears. When Elena saw him, her expression flickered between relief and terror. Their eyes met across the warehouse, I'm here, his gaze said. I'm going to get you out. Be careful, hers replied. Please be careful. Sweet, isn't it? Marcus stepped forward, his snake tattoo writhing as he tilted his head. The boss who never showed weakness, reduced to a lovesick fool. Isabella would be disappointed. Dominic's jaw tightened at his late wife's name, but his voice remained calm. You've made your point, Marcus. Let them go. This is between us. Between us? Marcus laughed. No, Dominic. This stopped being between us the moment you started investigating me. The moment you put Victor on my tail. The moment you threatened everything I've built. Everything you've built? Dominic's voice dropped to ice. You've built nothing. You've sold children. You've betrayed every principle I taught you. Principles don't pay for penthouses. Marcus shrugged. But enough talk. Here's how this works. You're going to sign over control of your entire operation to me. Bank accounts, properties, contacts, everything. Once the transfer is complete, I might let your precious nurse and her brats live. Dominic appeared to consider this. He took a step forward, then another, his hands still raised in surrender. Before we discuss terms, he said quietly, I have one question. Cross rolled his eyes. Make it quick. Dominic's gaze swept across the warehouse counting guards, noting positions, calculating angles. Then he looked directly at Marcus. Do you believe in karma? For a split second, confusion flickered across Marcus's face. Then the world exploded. Glass shattered overhead as Victor's team crashed through the skylights, rappelling down on tactical lines. The service door burst open simultaneously, more soldiers pouring through with weapons blazing. Flashbang grenades detonated, filling the warehouse with blinding light and deafening sound. Chaos erupted. Dominic was already moving, sprinting toward Elena and the twins, while his men engaged Cross's guards. Bullets whizzed past his head. Someone screamed. A body hit the ground behind him. But he didn't stop, didn't look back. He reached Elena in seconds, his knife already out, slicing through her bonds. Dominic, she gasped. I've got you. He cut her wrists free, then moved to Lily and Rose. I've got all of you. The twins tumbled into his arms the moment they were loose, sobbing against his chest. Elena staggered to her feet, pulling her sisters close, shielding them with her body as the firefight raged around them. We need to move, Dominic shouted over the gunfire. He grabbed Elena's hand, positioning himself between his family and the battle. Stay behind me. Don't let go. They ran. Halfway to the exit, Dominic felt the hair on the back of his neck rise that primal instinct that had saved his life a dozen times before. He started to turn, but Elena saw it first. Marcus, bleeding from a wound on his arm, had broken free from the chaos. His gun was raised, aimed directly at Dominic's back. His finger was on the trigger. Time slowed. Elena didn't think, didn't calculate, didn't hesitate. She shoved Dominic sideways with all her strength, throwing herself into the space he had occupied. The gun fired. The bullet meant for Dominic's spine tore through Elena's shoulder instead. Pain, white-hot and all-consuming, exploded through her body. She heard herself cry out, felt her knees buckle, saw the warehouse ceiling spinning above her as she fell. And then Dominic's face appeared in her vision, his eyes wild with horror, his mouth forming her name over and over again. Elena! Elena! She wanted to tell him it was okay. She wanted to tell him she loved him. She wanted to tell him to protect her sisters, but the darkness was already pulling her under. The last thing she heard before consciousness fled was Dominic screaming her name, and the sound of another gunshot, this one from Victor's weapon, finally silencing Marcus Webb. Then there was nothing at all. Victor's bullet found Marcus's leg before Dominic could reach his gun. The traitor crumpled to the ground, screaming, his weapon clattering away across the concrete. Across the warehouse, Cross was already on his knees, 3 of Dominic's men holding him at gunpoint, while Victor secured his wrists with zip ties. The battle was over. They had won. But Dominic didn't care. He fell to his knees beside Elena, gathering her limp body into his arms, blood soaked through her shirt, spreading across the fabric like a crimson bloom. Her face was pale, too pale, and her eyes were closed. No, 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 no. The words tore from Dominic's throat, raw and desperate. Elena, Elena, wake up. You have to wake up. Her head lolled against his shoulder. She didn't respond. Elena! He pressed his hand against her wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but it seeped through his fingers no matter how hard he pushed. Stay with me. Do you hear me? You don't get to leave. Not like this. Not for me. Lily and Rose appeared at his side, their small faces streaked with tears and terror. They grabbed their sister's hands, clutching them like lifelines. Elena! Lily sobbed. Elena, please wake up. Don't die, Rose whispered, her voice breaking. Please don't die. You promised you wouldn't leave us. Victor materialized behind Dominic, phone already at his ear. Ambulance is 3 minutes out. Police are en route for the containers. I've given them the location of all 15 children. Dominic barely heard him. He pulled Elena closer, pressing his forehead against hers, feeling the faint warmth of her breath against his skin. She was still breathing, still alive. You can't leave me, he whispered, his voice cracking. I just found you. After 3 years of darkness, you walked into my life and made me believe again. You can't, his breath hitched. I was going to marry you. I have the ring in my pocket. I was going to ask you on Sunday, after pancakes, when Lily and Rose had chocolate on their faces and you were laughing at something stupid, I said. A tear slid down his cheek, the first he had shed since Isabella's funeral. Please, please, Elena, don't make me bury someone I love again. Sirens pierced the night air. Paramedics burst through the warehouse doors moments later, rushing toward them with a stretcher and medical equipment. Dominic didn't want to let go. Every instinct screamed at him to keep holding her, to protect her from anything else that might try to take her away. But Victor's hand gripped his shoulder. Let them work, boss. They can save her, but you have to let them work. Dominic forced his arms to release her. He watched as the paramedics loaded Elena onto the stretcher, calling out medical terms he didn't understand, attaching monitors and IV lines with practiced efficiency. I'm coming with her, he said. It wasn't a request. The paramedic hesitated, but something in Dominic's eyes must have warned him not to argue. Get in. Keep the children calm. Dominic lifted Lily onto the ambulance, then Rose. They curled against him on the narrow bench, their small bodies shaking with silent sobs as they watched the paramedics fight to stabilize their sister. Behind them, police cars flooded the warehouse lot. Officers swarmed toward the containers where 15 children waited in the dark, about to be freed. Marcus was being loaded into a separate ambulance, his wounded leg bandaged, handcuffs glinting on his wrists. Cross was shoved into the back of a police cruiser, his silver hair disheveled, his cold eyes finally showing something like fear. But Dominic saw none of it. His entire world had narrowed to the woman on the stretcher, to the beeping of the heart monitor, to the paramedic calling out her vital signs. Is she going to be okay? Lily asked, her voice tiny and terrified. Dominic looked down at the little girl who had marched into a coffee shop and changed his life forever. Her face was swollen from crying, her pink dress torn and dirty, her eyes begging him for reassurance he wasn't sure he could give. He swallowed the fear that threatened to choke him. Your sister is the strongest person I've ever met, he said, pulling both girls closer. She protected you. She protected me. She fought when anyone else would have given up. He pressed a kiss to Lily's forehead, then Rose's. She's going to be okay. She has to be. His hand found the small velvet box in his pocket, and he held it tight. Please, he prayed silently, to a god he had abandoned years ago. Please don't take her from me. I'll do anything. Be anything. Just let her live. The ambulance screamed through the night toward St. Michael's Hospital, and Dominic Ashford, the man who had never begged for anything in his life, begged the universe for mercy. The first thing Elena became aware of was the beeping. Steady, rhythmic, familiar, the sound of a heart monitor she had heard 1,000 times in her career. But this time, it was measuring her own heartbeat. The second thing she noticed was the warmth wrapped around her left hand. She forced her eyes open, blinking against the soft morning light filtering through hospital blinds. The room slowly came into focus, white walls, medical equipment, the faint smell of antiseptic. St. Michael's. She was in St. Michael's, the hospital where she had spent countless hours saving other people's lives. Now someone had saved hers. Elena? The voice came from beside her. She turned her head slowly, every movement sending dull pain radiating through her shoulder, and found Dominic. He looked terrible. Dark circles carved deep shadows beneath his eyes. 3 days of stubble shadowed his jaw. His usually immaculate shirt was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his entire appearance suggesting a man who hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't left this room for anything. But his eyes, those gray eyes that had captivated her from the first moment, were fixed on her with such intensity, such desperate hope, that Elena felt her heart crack open. Dom. Her voice came out as a rasp, her throat dry and scratchy. He was on his feet instantly, grabbing a cup of water from the bedside table, gently lifting her head to help her drink. His hands trembled slightly, this powerful man who commanded an empire, shaking like a leaf because she had woken up. Slowly, he murmured. Small sips. You've been out for 3 days. 3 days. The words echoed in her foggy mind. Movement in the corner of the room caught her attention. On a small sofa, bundled under a colorful blanket that definitely hadn't come from the hospital, Lily and Rose lay sleeping. Their faces were peaceful, their small hands intertwined even in sleep. They haven't left either, Dominic said, following her gaze. The nurses tried to make them go home, but Rose cried, and Lily threatened to call the police. A ghost of a smile crossed his exhausted face. They're very persuasive. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Her sisters, Her brave, stubborn, wonderful sisters. The warehouse, she whispered. What happened? Marcus. Cross the children. All handled. Dominic sat on the edge of her bed, carefully taking her hand in both of his. Marcus and Cross are in federal custody. The FBI took over the case. Apparently that trafficking ring stretched across 6 states. They're both looking at life sentences. Relief flooded through her, but she needed to know more. The children? The ones in the containers? All 15 rescued. They're being cared for, processed through child services. Several have already been reunited with their families. Dominic's thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. And Sophia, the little girl you found, the one who started all of this, a family in Vermont, has already begun the adoption process. She's going to have a home. The tears Elena had been fighting finally broke free. She cried for Sophia, who would grow up safe and loved. She cried for the 15 children who had been pulled from darkness into light. She cried for her sisters, who had been so brave through something no child should ever experience. She cried for herself for the fear and the pain and the moment she had truly believed she might never see any of them again. And she cried for Dominic, who had come for her, who had burned his world down to save her. Hey, his voice was impossibly tender. He leaned forward, using his thumbs to wipe the tears from her cheeks. You're safe now. Everyone's safe. It's over. I was so scared, she admitted, her voice breaking. Not for me, for them. For Lily and Rose. For those children I could hear crying. For you, walking into that trap. You took a bullet for me. Dominic's voice caught. You pushed me out of the way and let yourself get shot. Do you have any idea? He stopped, pressing his forehead against hers, breathing her in. Don't ever do that again. Promise me. Don't ever sacrifice yourself for me. Elena managed a weak smile through her tears. I'm a nurse. I can't watch someone get hurt and do nothing. It's not in my nature. Then I'll just have to make sure you're never in that position again. He pulled back slightly, and Elena saw something shift in his expression. Something vulnerable and determined and terrified all at once. Elena, he said, his voice trembling in a way she had never heard before. There's something I need to ask you. Dominic reached into his breast pocket with trembling fingers. The small velvet box emerged, worn slightly at the edges now, after 3 days of being clutched, held, prayed over. He had carried it through the rescue, through the ambulance ride, through 72 hours of sitting beside her bed wondering if he would ever get the chance to give it to her. Elena's breath caught when she saw it. I had a plan, Dominic said quietly, turning the box over in his hands. I was going to ask you at the end of the month. I had everything figured out, reservations at the best restaurant in Boston, candles, flowers, a string quartet playing in the corner. He laughed softly, shaking his head. Maria was going to make your favorite dessert. Victor was going to keep Lily and Rose entertained so we could have a moment alone. It was going to be perfect. Elena's heart pounded against her ribs. But these past 3 days, sitting here watching you breathe, praying for you to open your eyes, his voice cracked. I realized something. I don't need perfect. I don't need fancy restaurants or string quartets or choreographed moments. He looked up at her, and his gray eyes held everything fear and hope and love so profound it took her breath away. I just need you. From the corner of the room came a sharp gasp, followed by frantic whispering. Rose! Rose, wake up, look! What? What's happening? Oh! 2 small figures scrambled off the sofa, blanket flying, and rushed toward the bed with eyes wide as saucers. Dominic is proposing to Elena, Lily shrieked, bouncing on her toes. He has a ring, a real ring. I knew it. Rose clapped her hands over her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. I knew he loved her. I knew it. Dominic laughed, a real, full laugh that transformed his exhausted face into something radiant. He turned back to Elena, who was crying and laughing at the same time, and slowly opened the box. The ring inside was simple but exquisite, a delicate band of white gold with a modest diamond that caught the morning light. And on the inside of the band, barely visible, was an engraving. Forever, D. Elena Reyes, Dominic said, his voice steady even as his hands shook. Will you marry me? I promise to protect you and your sisters for the rest of my life. I promise to be there every Sunday morning to make pancakes, even if I burn them. I promise to hold your hand through every storm, to catch your tears, to make you laugh when you want to cry. I promise. Elena grabbed his collar and pulled him toward her. The kiss was gentle. She was still injured, still weak, but it was certain. Absolute. A declaration that needed no words. When she finally released him, her smile was brighter than any sunrise Dominic had ever seen. Yes, she whispered against his lips. 1,000 times yes. The room erupted. Lily and Rose launched themselves onto the bed, wrapping their arms around both adults, in a tangle of limbs and laughter and happy tears. The heart monitor beeped faster, and somewhere down the hall a nurse looked up in concern before another nurse. One who knew Elena well waved her off with a knowing smile. "We're going to be a family," Lily announced, her voice thick with joy. "A real family. Dominic is going to be our brother," Rose added. "Actually," Lily corrected imperiously, "he's going to be our brother-in-law. That's different." "I don't care what he is," Rose declared, burying her face in Dominic's chest. "He's ours now." Dominic held them all. Elena pressed carefully against his side, mindful of her wound. Lily and Rose draped across his lap like they belonged there. His family, his home, his reason for everything. 3 years ago, he had buried his heart in a grave beside his wife. 3 weeks ago, 2 little girls had walked into a coffee shop and resurrected it. And now, in a hospital room filled with morning light and happy tears, Dominic Ashford finally understood what he had been searching for his entire life. Not power, not control, not the empire he had built in the shadows. Just this. Just love. Just a family that had chosen him as surely as he had chosen them. Elena reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the stubble on his jaw. "I love you," she whispered. "I think I've loved you since you ordered hot chocolate for 2 little girls you'd never met." "I love you too," Dominic replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I think I've loved you since those same 2 little girls told me their sister needed someone to make her smile." Lily poked her head up between them. "So we're the heroes of this story, right?" "Absolutely," Dominic confirmed solemnly. "The greatest heroes of all." Rose giggled. "We should get a reward." "How about pancakes?" Elena suggested. "When I get out of here, we'll have the biggest pancake breakfast ever. With chocolate chips, mountains of chocolate chips." The 4 of them stayed like that as the morning sun climbed higher, tangled together in a hospital bed that was too small, laughing and crying and planning a future none of them had dared to imagine. Sometimes love doesn't arrive on time. Sometimes it comes 17 minutes late, carried by 2 little girls with whipped cream on their noses and an unshakable belief that sad people deserve happiness too. Sometimes it walks through fire and darkness and emerges stronger on the other side. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe gives you a second chance at everything you thought you had lost. All you have to do is be brave enough to take it. Dear friends who have followed this story to the very end, thank you for staying with us through every twist, every tear, and every moment of this journey. The twins who found him is more than just a love story. It's a reminder of the profound truths that guide our lives. Family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who show up for you, who fight for you, who choose you every single day. Love can find us when we least expect it, sometimes in the most unlikely places, delivered by the most unexpected messengers. And no matter how dark our past, no matter how deep our wounds, there is always hope for healing. There is always a chance to begin again. If this story touched your heart, we would be so grateful if you would subscribe to our channel and tap that notification bell so you never miss a video. Please like this video and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. We would love to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever experienced a moment where love found you when you weren't looking? Has a child ever taught you something profound about life? Please share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Your stories inspire us more than you know, and we read every single one. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for believing in love, in second chances, and in the power of stories to bring us together. We wish you good health, happiness, and peace in your daily life. May you always find sunflowers on your darkest days, and may the people who love you never stop showing up. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you in the next video.